Greetings friends, thank you for being here. If you're new, welcome to my channel. I hope you learn a lot from this tutorial and enjoy following along. So in this video, I will show you how to paint a sunset snowy reflection. I'll make sure to walk you through every step I take so that you can easily follow along and learn some cool techniques. We'll learn how to blend and create smooth transitions with acrylics, how to create our trees and detail them, and finally how to add our reflections and create ripples in our river. This is a great beginner's lesson or anyone that wants to learn how to work with acrylics. Alright guys, let's go over the materials and have lots of fun. I'll be using a 16 by 12 studio canvas. It already has gesso coat on it. I don't need to add anything to it, except I did add a glaze of water and let it naturally dry, and that tightened up my canvas and made it nice and firm. For brushes, I'm going to use 2 of my M1 blending brushes. And then this is a size smaller. It's an M2 blending brush. If I want little blends, the small one works best. So we're going to lay out our colors and then with a dry blending brush blend it all in, and it's going to be a quicker transition to other colors. I'll be using my 4-piece brush set here and I'll show you what's inside. We have the number 8 and number 4 brushes. They're like filbert style, synthetic hair. When I leave them in the water for a few minutes, they become nice and soft, and I can create little blends, right? Or I can create like grass and leaf texture. And then we have the 1/2 inch flat brush, and we're gonna use 0 detail brush for all the little fine details we're gonna be adding, like skinny branches and things like that. Also for this piece, I'm gonna use an artist sponge. This is a smaller one. They come in a pack. Sometimes they're bigger, right? I chose one that is smaller because of the size of canvas, and I'm gonna add smaller parts. This creates leaves and branches effect, and you could use this, but if you don't have anything like it, you could do a similar effect with your number 8 brush or number 4 brush by dabbing like this, or you could create some interesting texture using this. Okay, for paint, I'm going to use my 24 set of acrylics, and I'll show you which colors from this set. Medium yellow, orange, scarlet red, ultramarine blue, and lamp black. From my 5 set of acrylics, I'm going to use titanium white. We need palette, and I'm going to use my paper palette here and palette knife to mix your paint. We need a jar of water and some paper towels to clean your palette knife or dab some of your brushes onto to clean paint or clean some water. And finally, if you have a hair dryer, use that because it helps dry out the first layers. For example, we're going to add a quick blend, and then before adding our next layers, we want to make sure it's dry, because if we don't wait, then we're going to start peeling off paint and you're going to see canvas showing through. You could use any materials you have available, but if you are interested in my brushes or paints, they are available at ColorByFeliks.com for more details. Okay, so quickly I'm going to explain the plan. We're going to keep it pretty simple. This could be a sunrise or a sunset, whatever you prefer. So we're going to have a sun somewhere a little bit. This is the middle of the canvas. We're going to probably pick it up a little higher because we want the landscape and some snow to be right here, and we don't want it to be too low. We want it a little higher. I think that always looks best with the landscapes, having the sun a little higher, unless you're having it right here somewhere and then you focus on the sky more, whatever you want to focus on, right? So anyway, so a little higher than the middle. That's where the glow of the sun will be. There will be some trees here with some snow on them, branches, a lot of details there, and then we're gonna have some snow and a ground right here, and then reflecting of the light from the sun into our river here. And we're gonna reflect it and detail everything. That's the plan. Let's see what happens and have lots of fun. Remember to take breaks. I like to work in sections, so I focus on one part at a time. So the first part is blending, and like I mentioned, blending is fast, so I usually move on to the next part. But you don't need to finish this in one day. I think that it's important to enjoy the process and not get overwhelmed by the whole image. So just focus on small part at a time. So after blending, I will then quickly sketch out my faraway, trees. And by the way, after that, I'll work on adding the glow of the sun, right? And then we're gonna work on the faraway trees and then add our bigger trees, closer ones, kind of detail those, add the base layer of our river here. And all these are little sections and parts. So the top, middle, and the bottom part will be the last. That's how I like to work, start from the furthest distance and work my way to whatever is closest to us. All right, let's mix some colors for the background sky. We're gonna cover about half of the canvas. Here's my palette paper, and I'm gonna start from the left corner, going to the right from lightest to darkest. We're gonna start with titanium white first. And by the way, I do have a color mixing guide. It's free to download if you'd like to follow along and know exact the amount of ratio I add for each color. You can download in the description below. That way it will be easy for you to understand and follow along. So titanium white, and we're gonna add about a thumb amount of white and then a little less each time. So just a little less than a thumb. And then let's start with 3 colors. This is a little less than a thumb amount. It is smaller than this one. And this one's a little smaller than this one. So you have the most white here. Let's start with 3 because the sky, I want to keep it simple. I don't want to add too much transitions of color. So I'm going to keep it from orange yellow going into like a pink and ultramarine blue and pink. I'm going to close the lid so that paint won't dry out. And we're going to add some medium yellow because this is closest to the sun. We want to make it brighter. So I'm going to add a nice amount here and then maybe a little bit here. Okay, close the lid. Let's add orange. Okay, orange to the first one, about the same amount as yellow. And then let's add the orange, a small amount, to create a softer transition. And then we're going to pick up scarlet red and add a small amount in here. Maybe the most, more than orange and yellow. Okay, we could add a little more later. Let's just see what that looks like. And then let's add a little bit here, about the same amount as the second color. And then we're gonna add ultramarine blue to this one, a small amount. Okay, so there's a little more red and I want it to still lean towards more of the red color, pink red colors, but slowly transitioning to the cooler color, blue. All right, so let's start there, and I can always add more. Let's just see what we got. So from the lightest color here, and my palette knife, I'm gonna mix it. And I've had this palette knife for years, ever since high school. So a very long time. I love it. And there's some palette knives that are, different kinds. They're rough. They don't bend as well. This one's like a perfect shape. It's not too wide and it's not too stiff or too soft. It mixes the colors nicely. This is something important to keep in mind. Art materials do matter. You could use cheaper stuff, but you're just going to work a little harder to achieve, a certain look to your painting. But it's possible to create beautiful paintings with cheap art materials. But when you can upgrade, I encourage you as you get better to try, experiment. Okay, so pile it up like this and then move on to the next color, and it should be a softer transition, right? Okay, that's nice. Okay, that's perfect. Not too dark. We want to keep the sky still light. That's why we added more white. Okay, once you mixed it, put it in one pile. And finally, let's mix this one and see what we get. I don't want it to be too dark, so I want to make sure I'm happy with the way it looks. I want it to be just slightly darker than this one. Each time I want it to be slightly darker, but not too intense, okay? And I'm looking at this and I actually like it. It's perfect. There you go. So now you could use paper towel and dab your palette knife all the way in the water jar, so water helps clean it out faster, and just wipe your paint off. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean. Okay, so I zoomed in the camera, and remember, I'm going to cover about half of my canvas, and if it goes a little lower, that's okay. But I'm going to work on the top section, and let's pick up our water. Have your water jar somewhere near your canvas where it's going to be easy access. We're going to pick up our M2 blending brush and dab it all the way in the water, and then squeeze part of the water out. Not everything. I don't squeeze too hard. There is still some water in there, but it's not a lot. See, if I squeeze really hard, more drips will come out, right? But we don't want it to be, we want a little bit of water in it. So I'm going to dab my brush, squeeze part of it out, not hard. And then when I need to add more water to my paint, because I feel like it's dragging and there's not enough water, I will just a tip dab it in the water and then pick up more paint and then equalize it by spreading the paint and water together. And if your water is dripping on a canvas, that means you have too much water. So I would just pick up more paint and swirl it and try to blend it out, right? But if you see bubbles on your paint, that's okay. That's a good sign. That means you have enough water and paint. I'd encourage you to practice blending if you're new to it. Once you catch the technique, it's a lot of fun and you can do very cool blends with acrylics. So here are the colors again. We're going to start with the lightest color. I'm going to pick up this orangey, bright orange color. Okay, just like this. And we're going to start somewhere a little higher, maybe in the middle. Let's start in the middle. Okay, swirl, you see bubbles, that's good. I feel that it's running smooth on the canvas, but my canvas is not showing through because I have the right amount of paint and water, right? If you had too much water, you would start to see transparency going on, right? So when you feel the paint is dragging a little bit, right, then you want to dab your brush in the water to pick up more water and paint and try to equalize it. So dab my brush in water, pick up a little more paint, swirl it right in the middle, and then dab my brush slightly in the water. This is a quick process. Our next color, this pink, right around there, I'm going to start to add some pink color. Okay, so a little more, dab it in the water, a little more pink. A lot of this is going to be covered with trees, so you're not going to see too much. And this is where the glow will be. We're going to add the sun later. So add a little more pink, and then as you go up, it's going to fade in to our last color. So dab my brush in the water and then use this last color and with water and paint, swirl it. I'm not pressing too hard. So a little more paint. I feel like I have enough water, so I'm not going to dab my brush yet in the water. A little more of the paint. And don't focus on blending yet. A little bit more water, not too much, and paint. And add your colors. A little more paint. And there you go. Right, covered the canvas nicely. And then, once you have everything covered, we're going to put our brush down and quickly with our dry blending brush, M1, we're going to start to blend from the lightest areas and take away the brush strokes. Swirl, right? And gently press, not too hard, gently, from the lightest, transitioning to the darker. Okay. Pull the paint upwards. And gently press. Take away the brush strokes. And move your brush around. Gently. Okay. And once you're done, we're gonna clean out our blending brushes, dry out the background, and work on the sun. Barely pressing, and go all the way, and it covers the canvas nicely. There you have it. And here's how it looks so far. It's nicely dry, and I can continue to the next part. I cleaned my blending brushes, got a new water, and I'm gonna put my number 8 and number 4 brushes in the water jar so they could sit for a few minutes. They'll become nice and soft. I'm gonna mix a few colors for my sun, right? So it's gonna be very simple. A little bit of white and a little less white here and more medium yellow and a small amount of orange. And I'm gonna mix just this color. We're gonna add our sun. And here's the color. It's leaning towards a little more on the transition into the orange. And I wanted to do that because of the background. You see how this is more on the orange side, right? I wanna make sure it's a little bit of a smoother transition because we're gonna add the sun and then we're gonna, around the sun, we're gonna start to add the glow of the light. And I wanna glaze it out with water into this orange and that'll create a smoother blend, right? So something like this. I'm gonna zoom in the camera and remember the sun, this is the middle of the canvas. We're probably gonna put the sun about somewhere maybe 1.5 inches up. And this is totally up to you. You can have it a little higher, lower, wherever you want it. And you can add it as big as you want it, right? So I'm gonna add it somewhere in here. All right, let's pick up our number 4 brush, dab it in the paper towel to take away some water. We don't want too much. And we're gonna start with white. White by itself. Okay. And we're gonna add our sun, okay? So I'm guessing I'm gonna have it be somewhere right in here. Okay, so the first layer is gonna be rough and transparent. So what I'm gonna do is let this dry. I'm not adding any clouds. So I'm gonna use a hairdryer to make sure this layer is dry. And then once it's dry, I'm gonna add another layer of white because right now it's a little transparent and you can see the background orange. But the more layers you add, the more solid it becomes. Okay, it's dry. And now I could add another layer with my number 4. And add it right in the middle. You see how that becomes more brighter? And now I can dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel. I can take away a little bit of that white and add this color with water. And what I'm gonna do is add this bright color right around the edge. Around my sun, I'm gonna start to add the glow, okay, with a little bit of water and some paint. Okay, and then swirl, and then as you go up, because you have water, it blends out nicely. As you go up, you just blend it out gently. And you can switch your brush as you go higher to your number 8 brush. So I'm gonna take my number 8 brush, tap it on the paper towel because I don't want too much water, and use a little bit of paint and water. Okay, like this, right? And we're just gonna continue around, swirling and blending that bright yellow color, creating a glow. You might want to do this a few times, so I'm going to let this layer dry, and then I'll repeat like I did with the sun. I'm going to repeat again to create a blend, smooth blend. And remember, we're going to have branches and things right in here, so it's going to be covering a lot of it. So mainly focus on this middle part, and then as long as you have it smooth transitioning to the background color, you're good to go. Okay, so barely any paint now, and more water, and that's it. So I'm going to let this dry again. All right, it's dry, and finally the third layer, we're going to make it cleaner and do even more of a smoother transition. Okay, so I'm going to start with the white and my detail brush with some water, right? And right in the middle, add the brightest color, and then this is where you can make it more circular, shape it, right? The way you like it. And as you go out, we're going to dab our detail brush in the water, mix it with a little bit of this yellow and white, because we want to create the transition. Right, and then swirl gently, take your time, and because you have water, it really blends nicely. And as you go out, obviously, we're gonna use this color now, some water, and actually we can switch to our number 4 for this part. So I'm gonna dab it on in the water and then paper towel, so I won't have too much paint or water. And with a little bit of this yellow and some water, right, we're gonna start to blend where we left off. Okay, these are small details that it's probably going to be hard to see in the video, but if you're following along and doing this, you'll start to notice that it really makes a nice glow of the sun and makes a big difference. Then if you were to add the white, and that's it, it would look flat, right? We don't want it to look flat. We want it to look like a glow from the light is really shining bright. So water helps make it look transparent. Okay, again, you can switch to your number 8 if you want to. I'm just with water blending out a little bit of that yellow and paint. Okay, and here's what we got so far. Let's continue. We're going to mix some colors for the base of our trees and get the outline of where the land will be and the shape of our river. So these are the colors I added. About a thumb amount, maybe a little less of white, and then orange and a little bit of scarlet red. And then we have less white than this one, a little bit of scarlet red, and then ultramarine blue. And then we have less white, more scarlet red, and then about the same amount of ultramarine blue like the white, and then a touch of lamb black. And then for our trees, the darkest color is lamb black and scarlet red. And here's what we have. I did add scarlet red. I might use this for when we add our faraway trees. I want the bottom to be a little darker in red. I want it to create a transition to the light because it's close to the sun, right? This will be the lightest, and then we add red on the bottom. And then I'm going to use this yellow for the top right? We want to create the reflection from the sun hitting the top of our trees. And I'll be showing you guys, but these are the colors, something like this. And if we need to mix more colors, I will show you along the way. But let's start with these colors. So I'm going to pick up my number 4 brush and some water and quickly finish laying out the land and where the snow will be so that I can see the image a little more clear. Let's just use this color right here. Okay, with some water, and we're gonna finish getting the layout first real quick, and we can always adjust later. This will be a rough sketch. So from here, from where the sun is, I'm going to go about 1.5 inches down. So this is where the land will start, and then the first part of our river showing will be probably right here. Okay, about this much. So, and like I said, we could always adjust later, but I'm gonna go all the way almost where the light is, right in here, and then start to curve. So it goes down a little bit. Okay, like I said, I'll draw the top in a little bit, but first I'm working on the bottom part. Okay, so here, this is our lowest part of the land, and here on the left side, I'm gonna pick it up a little bit. I'm gonna go about this high. This is where our other land will be, and randomly go all the way, probably, remember the glow of the sun is here. And your shapes don't have to look like mine, right? But something similar, and it'll look good, I promise. Okay, there'll be some snow in here. And I might even adjust some of these, make them a little bigger. Right? You'll see. As I paint, okay, so now here, I'm gonna go up. So this is the river, you can see right here, right? That'll be the river, and now I'm gonna quickly clean my brush, paint a little bit, and use this color. I don't want it to be too dark because this is the top of the snow area, right? About this much, and I'm just gonna kind of randomly almost bring it in the middle of everything. Some of the snow is gonna go higher, right? But let's just do this real quick. We're gonna come back and adjust this part later. This is good to do so that it can give us an idea. So then the snow is gonna be here. And make sure it's straight. So I'm gonna go down a bit here. Something like this. We will adjust and correct. Okay. And now I'm going to clean my brush. And now that I have a layout of the land and the top of my snow, rough sketch, I'm going to start to add the faraway trees, for example. we're gonna start with this color and some water, so make sure you don't have too much water. I'm gonna use a little bit of this color. And by the way, I'm gonna zoom in the camera so you guys can see. Start to add our faraway trees. And you can go as high as you want. I'm gonna go about this high. And bring it down. Very simple and easy to do. You want to skip some areas because I do like the background yellow showing through, right? Okay, continue on, and we're just going to fade it out. A lot of this is going to be dark over here as we go to the right and left. So something like this, and then it's going to fade out. And as you blend it down, right? Remember I told you about that red color? I'm going to use a little bit of this red, maybe mix it in with this one, so it won't be so red, right? We want it pretty dark, because this is the dark, you know, the shadows on the bottom. And this first layer, it's going to look rough, right? But when we add the second layer, it's all going to look nicely, you'll see. It's all going to come together and will look more solid. Okay, so rough layer. Okay. And you can go back to this color again. And a little bit of red. Try to gently blend those colors together. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry. I know it looks rough, but you'll see. We'll add the second layer and it's gonna look solid. So while it's drying, these little sections usually dries pretty quick, but while it's drying fully, I'm gonna finish off here. This area is gonna be pretty dark. You're not gonna see a lot of it because we're gonna have closer trees and snow and so, but to create one layer, you know, so you can see the image a little better, we're gonna add a darker layer. So a little bit of this, maybe mix it with the darkest color, right? And just add it. So you guys can see where the snow will meet, right? Just on the edges with our number 8. It's all going to be pretty dark in here. And you can kind of blend it out. Again, this first layer will look rough. So I'm going to dab my brush slightly in the water, tap it on the paper towel, do the same idea, same technique to this side. And swirl and create that dark shadow. Okay, that's good. All right, now that it's dry, I'm going to repeat the process, doing the same idea. Switch to number 4 brush, and go back to this light orange color, pink, right? And go over the top first, and this is where you can decide the shape of your trees and where the light starts to hit them, right? This is where you decide how they look. Because from here, it's going to look solid going down. Okay, you can also do this. Remember I told you about this color? So you could use this light yellowish color and glaze it on top even to create even a more smoother transition on top. These are little details that make your painting look, give more depth and, you know, make it look more realistic and not flat. Okay, just glaze that yellowish color, and you see how that maybe that light is hitting along these trees right there. Like I said, a lot of this is going to be covered. Let's just bring it down. I like how it's looking. This part, I'm going to go back to this orange color with some water and continue adjusting here. And then finally use a little bit of red, scarlet red, and this color. Let's make it solid here. You might have to do it. You see how it's looking a little more cleaner? You might have to do it one more time to get even a more softer look. Okay, so I'm going to add the darker colors on the bottom, right, like this. And then as I go up, I'm going to add more of this red and maybe mix it in with this to create a little bit of a smoother transition. Use this color by itself. I don't want to go all the way to the top. I'm going to add a little more red here. And here. Okay. So while this is drying, actually, I'm gonna blend out a little bit more right here. Clean my brush. I'm gonna use a little bit of yellow and this orange. I'm gonna try to blend this out, make it a little softer transition, barely pressing the top areas. You see how that works? And just be patient, swirl and move paint around. That's how you create smooth transitions for little sections. Okay? All right, while this is drying, I'm gonna continue switching to number 8 brush. You see how it's rough looking? I'm gonna repeat the process with similar colors, so maybe a little bit of this and this darkest color. Let's just maybe add a little bit of red to create a little bit of a transition. So a little bit of this color and red maybe here as well. Same idea. A little bit of red. I want to create that glow. And as I go out, you can use a little more darker colors here. And you see, the second layer makes it look even more solid. And after we add our third layer, it's going to look even more cleaner. So in here, what I'm going to do is just use this color and try to create a little bit of a smoother transition between those two colors. See how that works? And you can bring it up like I mentioned. A lot of this is going to be covered in the back with bigger trees. So, same idea. Let's just use this color by itself and create a little bit of a softer transition right in here. And then as you go in more, you could use the darker colors. And then maybe even red by itself, scarlet red with some water. Okay, all right, so now we will move on to adding our base of our trees. And I'm going to use my flat brush, so I'm going to dab it all the way in the water. Okay, and let's start with the little ones first. Well, actually, let's start with the big ones first, and then we can add the little ones later. So with the darkest color and some water and my flat brush, okay, we're gonna add the layout. All right, so let's start from the left and work our way to the right. So this is the land, and this is the top of the snow. We're gonna adjust some of them, you know, but at least we can see clearly, and we can add our placement. So our first closest, biggest tree will be probably right here somewhere. It's gonna go at an angle and probably to the top. I like to add a little mark here and then on top. So probably I'm gonna add it probably up in here somewhere. Okay, so I'm gonna first draw a skinny line going down, and then I make sure I like the way it looks, and if I do, then this is where I make it even thicker. Okay, and these trees are going to be the thickest. Obviously the far away ones are going to be smaller. So this is the first quick layout of our trees. So probably as it goes to the top, it's going to get a little skinnier. Okay, keep that in mind. And you can make it not straight. You don't want to make it perfectly straight, right? You want to create curves. That's what makes the painting interesting and not boring. When you add these little curves and details. So always remember that the closer trees come down a little bit more, right? And then further away ones, they're gonna go up, right? But let's fill in this first one with the darkest paint. And this is our first layer of the trees, so it's gonna look rough. So I'm gonna continue adding, I'm gonna add a little more darker color here. Okay, that's good. All right, so our next tree, I want to add another one next to this one, probably right here, and I'm gonna make it go down a little bit more, probably right in here like this. Okay, more bent, and this one will be a little skinnier. Remember, start skinnier on top, and then as you go down, it gets a little more thicker. Okay, I'm picking up paint and some water, quickly covering. You can make it a little thicker here. Okay, that's good enough. All right. Next, biggest tree will be next to this one also, but a little higher up right in here. And it's going to go right next to this one actually. It's going to go kind of right next to it and then right along the edge. Okay, and take your time. Okay, something like this. We will, add branches and adjust. But for example, this one, looking at those two, I want to actually make this one a little bigger, right? Because this is the closest tree. So I'm going to make it a little thicker and bigger here. All right. And then one big one right behind this. It will disappear into the snow, but it's going to go somewhere almost at a different angle to the left. It's not going to be as thick. It's going to be a little bit skinnier than the other ones, just a little bit. Okay. And to save time, I'm going to use my number 4 brush to fill in the darker spots real quick. Just going to use that. There you go. Okay. All right, that's good enough. We will make it look cleaner later. All right, so moving on. We're going to have another tree, another smaller one maybe, and it's just going to go in here. Okay, moving on, let's add the big ones here. So I want to make sure it's balanced, so I'm going to add my next tree right in here, and it's going to go actually I'm going to move it there, and that's okay. I want to move it more to the left, so I'm going to use a wet paper towel to just erase it while the paint is still wet. I didn't like that. Go back to your flat brush, because here I'm not going to add too much trees. So a little bit more to the left. And then this one's going to kind of go wavy and up, bending just a little bit, slightly. But it's going to go a little wavy like this. Make this one thicker, and then obviously not a perfect wave. We don't want it to be too perfect for these trees. All right, that's good. Next, right behind it, we're gonna have one at an angle, maybe like this. Maybe it splits. Totally up to you. Okay, this is where you add a lot of skinny ones. They're all gonna disappear. It's all gonna be covered in snow and branches. So I'm not worried about this part that much. So my next trees will be somewhere in there. And then some of these I'm going to use a detail brush, but the next biggest one will be somewhere in here next to the sun. And it's going to be skinnier. And I'm barely pressing. And then a bunch of little ones far away that you can barely see. We're going to add some darker ones here. And a lot of this is going to be pretty dark in here and covered with paint. So maybe here some branches that are going to the side. Okay, it's not going to be perfectly. And then a bunch of far away ones in here. And it's going to be faded out. It's all going to disappear. There you go. That's good enough. Okay. I'm going to clean my detail brush or my flat brush. And then I can use a little bit of this color by itself and add some smaller ones in here, for example. All right, so now I can use my either detail brush or number 4 brush to add a few main branches. So with the darkest color, for example, I'll show you for this tree here, right? And like I said, if you're comfortable doing this with your detail brush, because we don't want to make it too thick, right? You can. And bring it down. Right? And then the rest I will obviously correct with the detail brush. But I'm only working on the thicker branches that I know. For example, right here, right? I want to make a thicker branch right in here. And maybe another one disappearing out in the woods. Alright, you could switch to your detail brush real quick, and for example right here, right? I'm going to continue and let it make it look a little bit of a cleaner transition. Right? So with your detail brush, we're going to add more branches. Don't be afraid to go over. For example, remember these trees? We're going to continue fading it out. So you'll look a little bit like a smoother transition to the sky. For example, right here, right? We're going to just and if you don't like something, you can always clean it with your paper towel and water. But don't be afraid to go over and add this part, because we want to make it look like there's a lot of branches. I'm just getting the main branches right, and then we will go over and add snow, and you'll see. And then we can come back to the branches and detail in them later. But I'm adding just a little bit of the main ones. We are working in layers. So maybe there's some branches that are going up like this. Randomly with water. Some are going to the side, up, down. That's good enough there for now. And you'll see it all like come together once we start to add more and more details and snow. All the, maybe there's this branch, right? From this tree. Some branches coming from the top of these trees here. Same thing here, randomly go over. Make sure you have some coming down, you know, to the side. Don't worry about making it covering the sides here, because that's what, you know, once we add our next layers, you'll see we have to do this in order to see the image clearly. We have to add in layers. So it's looking flat right now with one color pretty much, right? But we're gonna add our base layer of our snow with our artist sponge, and then we're gonna go over with the lighter trees again, make it softer, right? And then darker ones, and keep going back and forth, and you'll start to see depth and all those details shining through. Okay. All right, that's good enough for now. I'm gonna add a few more here randomly like this. I can come back to the little details later for my trees here. Again, I'm only focusing on the main branches. So right here, I want this one. And do I like the positioning of it, right? Totally up to you and how thick you want it, right? Here's how it looks as a whole painting. Now let's move on and add our first layers of our snow. So it's going to look rough, but we're going to use a sponge for this part because we want to cover big chunks in big areas. Again, if you don't have an artist sponge, you can use your number 8 brush, right? And you can just dab like this and cover. You know, it might take a little bit longer, but that's okay. You can create some snow and cover. We're gonna try to cover about this much right in here with snow, and same thing here. A little bit of the background sky will show through, but it's gonna be random. We'll just see where we want that to happen. But I'm gonna mix some color for our snow, and then once we get the first layer of our snow, before we add more layers, I'm gonna quickly mix some color to just add the base layer of our snow here and a base layer of our river here. And then we'll go back to detailing the top part and then working our way down. If you've been enjoying this lesson so far and want to help support this channel, check out my Patreon. It's a great way to be a part of the creative process and help keep these tutorials ad-free and accessible to everyone. Inside Patreon, you'll get access to high-res reference photos, commercial-free versions of my YouTube lessons, behind-the-scenes content, and you can even help me vote on future painting topics. It's a small way to support this free content, but it makes a big difference. Thank you to everyone who supported me over the years. I appreciate you all. Now let's get back to painting. And here's what we have: a thermometer white, scarlet red, and then less ultramarine blue, and then here less white, and then less ultramarine or scarlet red, and then a little more ultramarine blue here. I'm going to mix these, show you what I get, and if I need to add anything more, I will show you. So as I was mixing, I decided to add a little more ultramarine blue to this one. I want to make it look, my snow to make it look a little bit more on the cooler side, and then I added a little more ultramarine blue here. And finally, I decided to add one more color for my snow. So thermometer white and ultramarine blue. And I'm gonna take part of this color, mix it with this one. All right, so as I was looking at this area, because it's closer to the sun, my snow for faraway trees over here, I want it to be a little lighter. So I do have this more on the pink side, right? But I want another color, lighter color. Like I did here, we have the darker bluish color here, and then we have a light one right here. So here I just added some white. I'm going to take part of this color, okay? Part of this darker pink color and mix it with this one, okay? So we just want a lighter color for the ones further away and near the sun. All right, finally, the last little detail. I want to make it more on the warmer side because it's closer to the sun, right? So I added a small touch of orange to this one. These are the colors I have right here. All right, so let's pick up our artist sponge, Warrior number 8, and I'm going to dab it all the way in the water, let it soak, and then squeeze all the water out. We don't want any water. We just want to make it soft so it'll be easy to bend, right? I'm going to choose a corner I like, right? Something like this, and start with the lightest color, this pink orange. I'm going to take a little bit of paint, not a lot, something like this. You could test the texture and the way it's going to look, right? So we're going to start to add a little bit in here. Okay, these are going to be, you can barely see them, so I'm not going to add too much. So I'm going over, trying to, so a little more of it, trying to see what looks best. And it's okay if you cover your sketch of your trees. This is our first layer, right? We're gonna have to go over the branches anyway again. So as I go up, it's gonna fade into the darker color. But I just wanted this more in here. I'm gonna use this corner now so I can see what I'm doing better. So a little bit more of this lighter color, and I wanna add a little bit more in here, and then I'm gonna add a little bit in here. Okay, I know it's hard to tell first what I'm doing, but you'll see. The more I start to add, you'll start to see it clearly. Okay, maybe a little bit in the background. That's good enough. Here as well. Faded. Okay, that's good. And now let's use the darker color as we go up, right? I'm going to start to add a little more darker snow in the background because we don't want our trees to be naked. We want to add branches and snow on them, right? Even in here, barely pressing, and fade it out. Okay, continue on with this color. Follow the pattern of your trees. Move your sponge around. And we just want to cover this. We want to make it busy. And here in our sky, with this color. And you can bring it down, blend it in with the color, the lighter color you added. Just a little bit more in here. A lot of this is going to be darker going in here. So I'm going to add a little more, and then I'm going to change into a darker color. So I'm actually going to mix some more colors, because I realized that my colors are pretty light, but that's okay. That's better than having too dark. Well, it doesn't really matter. You can always paint over anything, really. So I'm going to add this first layer, rough layer, randomly. And you could press harder if you want bigger areas to be covered, right? Okay, that's good. So I added a little more scarlet red, ultramarine blue, and a touch of lamp black to darken it into this one. So whatever color you have left, we're gonna darken this one, because we want to create some darker ones right here to the right and to the left in here. And here we are. I made it darker. So continue using your artist sponge and use this darkest color we just mixed, and we're going to start to add a little bit more on the darker side here. You can show some of the background, but it's going to be covered. A lot of it's going to be covered. Just keep that in mind. So I'm not going to have a lot of the background showing, but a little bit is going to be good. Okay, so for example here, I'm going to cover it. And this is even going to be darker. So I'll add one more color there with a dark, and you'll see what I mean later. Let's just focus on this next darkest color, and I'm going to blend it, bring it a little bit in here. You know, skip some areas. We don't want to overdo it, right? Just on some areas, because we do like the background showing through. All right. Background sky. So in here, I want it pretty dark as well. I don't want to carry too much of it to the light. Just a little bit. Okay, and this side, I'm going to add a little bit of a darker shadows on these branches here. A little bit, and then a little bit in here. So I'm going to skip some areas. Okay, that's good. All right. And you'll see once we go over, you know, I'm going to add the darker tones again on the bottom side here. But once we go over the branches again and add our lighter highlights of snow, it's going to really pop and make it look interesting. So a little more darker colors in here. Remember, I want a little bit of the background showing, but not a lot. I want it to be covered with leaves and snow. Make it look busy. And it's totally up to you. You could leave it a little more emptier than mine. There's no right way of doing it. So I'm gonna spend some time covering this part and then I'll show you what I get. All right, so for our final darker shadows and areas in our forest, I took the leftover whatever I had here, moved it here, added lamp black and scarlet red. All right, we just want a darker shade. It does not have to look exactly like mine, but something similar. As you could tell, this one is the darkest. So I'm going to continue using my artist sponge and start to add some darker shadows in my forest and really covers some areas here. This is where you'll start to see details happening, a little more clear details. So barely pressing. I'm not going to add too much. I'm going to skip some areas. Even add a little bit on top. Not everywhere. Just a little bit. I mainly want to add the darker tones in here. Maybe some darker shadows inside here. Okay. And fade it out. We don't want to overdo it. That's good enough. We can always come back and clean it up later. All right, next, I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, something similar, okay? I'm not gonna go in too much because I like the lighter parts here, but I am gonna add a little bit on the left side. All right, that's good enough. You could see I added darker shadows right here, and we want to create a glow, right? We don't want to add too much of darker ones in the middle. We want to create that smoother transition. So let's pick up our number 8 brush, and what we're going to do is start to add some snow. So lighter snow parts. So with our number 8 and this color, I'm going to start to add some bigger ones up here first. So for example, I'm going to add one here, right? One that is next to this tree. Right? See how that works? So you could do the same effect with this number 8 if you don't have an artist sponge. Both work. So here I'm going to add a little more details, more lighter snow parts, right? To make it look like they're coming at us, right? We don't want to keep it, we don't want to make it look flat. So with that color, I'm just going to add some little ones, fade it out. And we're going to go over the tree branches and everything later. This is the next layer of our adding, our first kind of like working in layers. We do a quick sketch, now we know the placement where we want the snow to lay, and then we go over our branches and our trees, big trees, and then we finalize it by adding, if we need to, this lighter snow parts again, right? It's a lot of back and forth and playing, but little by little it gets done, and you'll start to see the image more and more each layer you add. It's a lot of fun. So continue adding. Obviously these are further away trees, so I'm not gonna make them too big, right? I wanna only keep the bigger ones, the ones that are closest to us, right? For example, right here, we have some closer ones. And you can overlay, go face towards us a little bit. It does not have to, you don't wanna just go around these trees, right? You want to make sure some branches come towards us, and okay, like this, right? Makes it more realistic looking. So I'm not going to add everywhere, just a few parts where I want the lighter blue snow showing through, right? And if we did too much, we can always come back and go back and forth with the colors we have, adjust, paint over again, That's how you work. Go back and forth until you're happy with your snow, right? So here I'm not going to add too much, just a little bit on top here, in there. Bring some snow in here, right? Barely pressing over that lighter pink. All right, you can see I added a little bit on this side, right? A little inside here, and on top, not much. All right, so now I'm gonna use my number 4 brush and the lightest snow color here. And we're gonna add some lighter ones. For example, right in here, I wanna go over this and make it even brighter. Okay, real quick. You see how that turns out? And we're creating layers. And I'm not going to go in too much here because I want to keep it more a darker blue. I just want to add a little bit on where the light, I think, is hitting. Okay. So you could add as many details like this as you want. For example, here, I'm going to go over and add some brighter ones. I'm going to let this be here. Some brighter snow inside here. A little bit on top, why not? I'm not going to add too much. Just a few areas. And fade it out. Add some brighter ones maybe in here. Wherever you think will look good. Just add a few more. All right, so I'll come back to the branches and going over my trees, finalizing the top area. But before I do that, I want to add the snow, a base layer, and the base layer of our river. So since I have the paint still here, it's a perfect time to lay out your colors. Let's quickly use our number 8 and start with this bluish color, right? Let's just cover it. You don't need to go too high, but all the way to where the river starts. Let's just add it. All one color. All right, using this. With water. Just going over and adding a rough layer covering the white canvas, all with this color. Okay. So a little more paint. Let's add a little bit of this pink in here. I'm going to create a glow, lighter transition here. We'll go over that later. A little pink in here, why not? Reflecting into our snow. And use up the rest of your blue, purple color. There you go. And you can use your M2 blending brush to take away the brush strokes so it could be soft. You could just kind of go like this and take away the brush strokes. It makes it look more solid, right? And that's what we'll do to the river as well. Obviously, this is our first layer. We're going to go over the snow again. But for now, let this dry, and we're going to mix some colors quickly to add the base of our river. Here we have a thumb amount of white, and then medium yellow and some orange, and then less white here, less orange and scarlet red, a little more of that, and then less white, the smallest, and then scarlet red and ultramarine blue. And these are the colors for our base. All right, so I'm going to quickly go over with my number 4 and this darkest color that we have left with water, quickly go over the bottom, the area where the snow meets rough layer, right? We're obviously gonna go over this later, but this will kind of help us see where we need to stop with our paint. Okay. We'll make it a little cleaner later. Okay, something like that. All right, so now let's pick up our number 8 brush. We're gonna quickly add the brightest color, right? And go over where the sun, so the reflection is going to be the brightest in here. So I'm going to skip some areas here. I'm not going to add too much paint. I want to keep it pretty light, so I'm going to actually dab my brush in water, and with water I'm going to glaze it because I want to keep this area bright. So just glaze it with water up until here. That's good. Eyeball it right. My sun's right there, so this area is going to be bright. Alright, so go back to your orange again, and now you can start to fill in with more solid color on both sides. And what we're trying to do is create, and actually let's do this. Let's wipe some paint out. So with our paper towel, right where the sun is, I'm going to just wipe the paint out. We don't need dark paint in here because that's where the glow of the light will be. It'll be easier to add the glow. Something like that. Just wipe the paint out because we want to keep this reflection bright. Alright, that's good enough. I know it's confusing, but you'll see what I mean. So now I'm going to continue with just this orange. Go back to my number 8. And right before, and then I'm going to have it fade the light, start to get darker around here. Okay, something like this. Obviously we will paint over and add more white and make it brighter, right? But for now, this is good. So a little more of this orangey color. Okay, and now before I add any more, well, let's just add a little more. I know it's right there is good. So now I'm going to dab my brush in water. I'm going to use the next color. Start to add a little more. And let's go with that color in here, right wherever we stopped. Okay, real quick with water, we're going to add that glaze. So dab my brush in water, use more of this lighter. And then as you go in, right, we're going to add our final color, this darkest bluish red color, and just glaze it. Remember, this is our first layer, but it's going to look good once we start to add our reflections and all the beautiful details. Okay, a little more. And you could use your also, I could have used my M2 blending brush to cover these parts faster. I just decided not to do that because I was adding the little details inside here. Either way, it works. Okay, so now you could use your M1 or M2 blending brush and quickly take away the brush strokes, right? Starting from the lighter areas, blend in. It's okay if you go over your sun, the brightest areas. We just want the smooth blend to be inside here. And the river does not have to, remember, we're going to be adding reflection, so it does not have to be perfect. So I'm going to actually go like this a little bit, because there will be some reflections of ripples. So even if a little bit of the dark colors go through, that's totally good. Okay, that's good enough. All right. So I'm gonna let this dry and our base is done. All right, since I have some paint left, I'm gonna go over certain areas. For example, let's use a little bit of this light blue and a little bit of orange, right? And we're gonna add on some areas, for example, right here. And add that glow. Maybe you can use a little bit of this pink actually, and more on the pink side. Add the glow from the light, sunlight, reflecting onto our snow. I'm not gonna add everywhere, just a few parts to create some separations. Randomly go over here and fade it out. Okay, and you can use your number 4 brush as well, and you can use this lightest color with your number 4 brush and create some bright highlights from the sun. Real quick, we're going to go over this in a better way, but since like I said, since I have paint left, I'm going to add these little touches, little details. Why not? All right, and then also let's use this color for the snow, the base snow that we added. Let's go over and add that reflection a little bit in here. Let's bring it down about this much. And reflect a little bit of this snow. Because we have paint left, right? Okay, I'm going to reflect a little bit here, not a lot. So here's what we got so far. Now I'm going to mix some colors and start to detail our branches with some darker colors, right? Add a few of those. We don't want to overdo it, but we're going to add some branches. And then also as the base, I'm going to reflect some of these trees in our water, right? and then we'll mix some more colors to continue detailing. But this is what I have, just 2 colors. So I added a little bit of white, half a thumb, maybe less, more scarlet red, and then a little bit of medium yellow, and a touch of lamp black, and then scarlet red and lamp black by itself. All right, so these are the colors that we have, right? And I'm gonna pick up my number 4 brush, dab it in the water, make sure it's nice and damp, the brush. And before I work on the branches, I'm gonna quickly reflect the trees. So with a little bit of water and paint, let's start with the darkest color and pick up this darkest color, and then I'm going to eyeball it, right? You see how it goes at an angle, right? I'm gonna try to do my best. This is where, remember, reflection of the snow. So this is where it's gonna get dark in here somewhere. And I'm gonna do my best to eyeball it and try to reflect it. I don't wanna curve it too much, but just a little bit. Okay. So remember, this tree kind of goes to the side right here next to this one. So we're gonna add that as well in here. And we're just gonna have it fade. And since it's the river, it's not gonna be like a perfect, perfect line straight down, because we want to create a little bit of distortion going on in our river. Okay, something like that. All right, maybe. Okay, next, remember this one right here? We're going to bring it in and have it come down somewhere in here. Thicker on top, right? And then as you go down, it gets skinnier. We're doing the opposite. Okay. And then next to this one, also a rough. Sketch like this, and maybe this one is a little too, I don't want it to be too bent, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit more in here. And I'm going to erase a little bit in here with water, like that, and go back to the darkest color, and I'm going to bring it a little bit more this way. I don't want it to be too bent. I want my reflection to be a little more straight down. A little bit more. Okay. So then there'll be some more. Right, like right here. Bring some straight down. Okay, that's good enough there. All right, next I'm going to first do the big one. So remember this one? I'm going to bring it down here and reflect it with the darkest color all the way down. And then I'm just eyeballing it, trying to, maybe there's some inside here that we can barely see. This area is going to be pretty dark in here. And then some more, remember this one? I'm going to reflect this one down. Some of these as well. And then this one, remember? I'm going to bring this one down. Not make it, I won't make it too perfect. Bring it down, skip some areas, and fade it out. Dab my brush lightly in the water so it can run smooth. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush and use this color, lighter color, with a little bit of water because it's next to the sun. It's going to be a little lighter. This is a rough first layer. I'm going to quickly switch to a flat brush, dab it in the water, and continue using this lighter color with a little bit of water. And here I'm going to start to add a little bit cleaner lines. I don't want to overdo it, so I don't want to add too much. Just a little bit here. And this area, remember, like I said, it's going to be pretty dark in here. inside here, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I know it's looking rough, but that's what it takes to create details and make it look more realistic, right? So I'm going to switch to our number 8 brush, and remember, like I said, it's going to be darker, so I'm going to use water and this darkest color, and I'm going to glaze it in here with water a little bit. So a little more water, less paint. I want it to be transparent. I want this area to be dark. Same thing here with water and a little bit of this darkest paint. I'm going to glaze it a little bit in here. I know it looks messy, but you'll see. Okay. Same thing here. I'm going to add a little bit more darker shadows. Skip some areas. We still want the trees to, you know, be the darkest, the reflection. But a little bit on the inside, we have a little bit of dark shadows here from the branches and okay, dab my brush in the water, and then with a little bit of the darker paint, I'm gonna go in here. Some darker shadows. Okay, a rough first layer is good enough for now. And I'm actually going to add some scarlet red straight out of the tube and glaze it on some of these parts, and I'll show you. Let's also add orange. So scarlet red and orange. Let's start there. So clean my brush completely, and let's start with orange. Let's add a glaze of orange with water. We're adding a little more color to our river here, so it can stand out a little better, make it look brighter. Near the sun. And then let it fade out. Okay, so that's with just the orange and water. And now we're going to add the red. Okay, so a little bit of red. More. So dab my brush in the water and use a little bit of red now. Okay, and then let's glaze some red to make it even more brighter and warmer looking. Where we added glaze the red, same thing here. All right, that's good enough. Before I continue adding any more details, I know it's still looking rough, but at least we have the base down, and now we can take a step back and, adjust. This is where we're going to start to define things and make it look cleaner. Actually, let's do one more thing so that we can see the image even better. I'm going to add white straight out of the tube. And let's clean our number 4 brush completely so we won't have any paint, and then tap it on the paper towel. And remember our light. Let's use some white, titanium white, and just our number 4 brush. So the sun's right here. I'm going to start to reflect the brightest reflections of the light. And it's going to fade out. Try to keep it straight down as best as you can. Okay, and also, since we're at it, Let's add a little bit of medium yellow straight out of the tube. And we're going to clean our brush quickly with water and some medium yellow. I'm going to add a bright layer, transparent layer like we did with the orange next to the sun, the brightest area of the sun. You might have to do this a few times, and we will, you know. But you get the idea. Trying to create from brightest to darker colors. Let's just glaze it, and you might go over some of the white we just added, but that's okay. All right. For now, that's good enough. If you're loving this tutorial and you're ready to go deeper with your painting, I'd love to invite you to my mentorship program. This is where I teach my most in-depth lessons, the ones I don't share anywhere else. Inside the mentorship, you'll get access to exclusive full-length tutorials, personalized feedback on your paintings from me, live Q&A calls where you can connect and ask questions, monthly painting challenges, giveaways, and more. This is my inner circle of artists who are serious about growing their skills. It's been amazing to see the progress our members make, and I'd love for you to join us. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the screen or also in the description down below. All right, let's get back to painting. Okay, we got the full main layout of the whole image. Now we can adjust and correct and add details. So I'm going to work on the branches and work my way down. Let's pick up our detail brush, dab it in the water, and this is going to be a lot of the same thing. So I'll show you a little bit of where I add my branches, and this is totally up to you how many you want to add, right? And then once I'm done, I'll show you the whole image of my layout, right? But I'll show you the main branches, how I go over it. So with this darkest color, right, we're gonna cover the darkest branches first. So then, and then the little ones, we can add those later if we want, right? So for example, I'm gonna start with this corner, right? So some of these you could kind of see what's going on already, right? For example, this one, right? And we're just gonna add it, you know, follow along with water and a little bit of paint, right? It will run smooth on the canvas. So right there, and then we just start to add all these branches, right? Barely pressing. Okay. And we will go over these trees as well with the darkest color. Well, let's just focus on adding the darker branches first, and then we'll go over those later once we're done with the little branches. But you start to see how they start to pop, right? It's going to really come together once we go over our trees as well. You see this color of our tree? See how we're adding this darker shade? Right? So I'm going to be spending some time doing the same thing back and forth, and then maybe some of these branches are thicker and they go up. And maybe some branches are randomly going down, coming from the side, up, down, right? See how I'm skipping some areas where I added the snow. And you could use your number 4 brush as well to cover the bigger areas. I just want to show you how it looks real quick, how once you add this second layer of detail, how it stands out and makes it even more defined, right? As I'm doing here, I just like when it looks busy and a lot going on, but you don't have to. You can add a few branches and it will look good. Totally up to each person. How much detail you want to add. So let's continue under these branches. Some are coming down from the top, right? Okay, so before I continue with the little brush, I'm going to quickly switch to number 4 brush and fill in the darker areas, darker trees, for example, right here where I left off. I might have to go over with snow again, right? I'm going to try my best to skip some areas, but even if I go over it, it's okay. So the darkest color on the bottom here, right? We want to add that dark shadows and dab it and fade it upwards. Okay, that's good in there. And it's okay if you, like I said, go over your snow, because we can go over the snow and repeat the process again. You see I'm skipping, I'm not adding this dark color everywhere on my trees. Just the main parts where I think needs to stand out a little more, right? Still want the background sky showing a little bit, right? All right, so I can always come back and add more branches or correct, right, later, but I'm gonna continue and add some snow over them. So I added a thumb amount or less white, a little less, a small amount of scarlet red, and more ultramarine blue for the snow. All right, so it was a little too dark, that's okay. I added a little more white, and I'm gonna take part of this, because I might still use this, right, for the darker shadows of the snow. I'm gonna take a little bit of this, let's start there, and mix it with some white. Let's start with a detail brush and some water in this lightest color we have mixed. And we're gonna add a few details, for example, like this branch, right? We're just gonna randomly add some snow to it, right? You can skip some areas, maybe it's not perfectly laying there, right? And kind of follow the branches where you added, right? And add your snow. So this may take some time. Like I said, you can skip some areas and make it rough looking. Try not to make it too perfect. Okay, see how that looks? It's starting to look like there's a bunch of little branches and snow on them, right? Before it kind of looked flat. So that's why you go back and forth with, you know, paint, adding your details, and then little by little it starts to really stand out and come to life. It's exciting because usually it comes together towards the end. So some areas I'm just adding extra branches that you can't see because of the dark tree, right? For example, here, right? Maybe there's some branches that are on the side here that you can barely see. Some will have a little more snow, some less. Okay, so with water in that lightest color, continue. and move the branches around. Not just one direction, right? Play around with the layout. So there's a little more snow here, piled up, right? And you get the idea. So add as many as you want and as little as you want. Maybe you have a few of these, right? It's, again, totally up to each person. So I'm going to spend some time adding all my snow to my branches, and then I'll show you what I get once I'm done. And here's what we have so far. I can always come back to detailing and correcting later, but I'm going to continue. I ran out of paint, so I'm going to mix some more snow colors and work on detailing this part. And then after that, I will also mix some more colors for the reflection and detail our reflection. And then I can take a step back and see if I want to adjust and correct anything. So for this snow, I added a few more brighter in yellow and orange colors because of the sun. I want that reflection on some of the snow parts, like we kind of started on some areas here, to create more depth so that it won't look flat like this part right here, right? So we're gonna start to add a little more highlights to them and make it and shape our snow, right? So I added a little more color, so about a thumb amount of white less maybe, and then medium yellow, and then a touch of scarlet red, and then here less white, a little orange, and then scarlet red. And then here we have about the same amount of white, and then scarlet red, and then ultramarine blue, small amount, and then less white here, more ultramarine blue, and a little more scarlet red. Here are the colors. So I did add more white to this one and ultramarine blue to make it more leaning towards the blue side, with a little bit of red because it was leaning towards more of the pink side. And then I added a little more blue here and a little bit more white, not that much, just to make it not too dark, right? But something like this and you'll be good to go. So let's pick up our detail brush real quick and dab it in the water, and let's use the lightest color we just mixed, this one, with a little bit of water and some paint. We are going to add some highlights. Where the light is hitting here, we're going to start to add little details. Maybe it kind of comes down here. And then it goes up somewhere right there. Start to also add some in the water, right? Some snow. Bring some down to create some separation. So we're going to go over the bottom part with a darker color later. We're just focusing on the highlights. And here, I want to create a bright highlight. I'm going to use a number 4 brush for this part. I'm going to continue with the lighter highlights in here. Alright, so for the other parts I can come back to the detail brush later. Let's switch to number 4. And I'm going to continue with this light color. And because the light is hitting this area, remember I want to make this super bright. And then as I go in, I'm going to use this lighter pink color, the next color. And blend it in here. Maybe add some pink in here. A bunch of bright colors. Let's add some of that pink in here. And it's going to fade out. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush and then go back to this bright color again. And I'm going to add another layer here to make it even brighter. And let it fade out to that pink. Let's add some bright color around here. Let it fade. Okay, so now I'm going to clean my brush and then I'm going to use this light color, blue, with water. Continue adding your lighter highlights. To your snow. And creating depth, right? So a little bit of that in here. Okay, something like this. And I'm going to go ahead and blend the snow together between the ground and some of the snow is going to go up to the tree, right? let's bring some snow right here across. And you'll see I'll add dark shadows underneath here, and it's gonna come together nicely. Okay, something like this. Okay, starting to look a little more detailed. Right, that's what we want. Let's add the snow on this tree going up. Okay, I'm gonna clean my brush, and I'm gonna use a little bit of a darker color, snow, and add some darker shadows, for example in here. Just go over, and actually I'm gonna make it a little slightly darker, so I'm gonna add a little more ultramarine blue to my paint because I want it to be a little bit more darker, so a little more ultramarine blue to that last color. All right, something like this, right? A little more blue, and I'm gonna go over, add, that's much better, add a little darker shadows in my snow. Not everywhere, just a few areas where I want a little more details. For example, right here, right? Let's add a little bit inside, some separations. A little bit in there. Same thing here, go over on some areas. And then I'm going to add some details using a little bit of scarlet red and black. Okay, with my number 4 brush and this color, we're going to add some details. For example, maybe there's something in here, right? Some separation. Okay, so I'm going to start to make it look a little more sharper. You can gently add little grass effects by going like this. Remember this part right here. I'm going to add dark shadow in our snow. And you can switch to your detail brush and add some details. Tall grass with water in this dark color. For example, right here, right? You could add as much as you want. Barely pressing. Maybe here. Right? Maybe a little bit more in here. Connect some of these further out. Start to kind of reflect, right, with water and a little bit of paint. Start to kind of reflect, not much. That's good enough. And then here. Okay, so I'm going to spend some time and add my details to my snow. Right, and then once I'm done, I'll show you what I get. One last detail I want to show you guys, a little bit of white and medium yellow. I want to create some brighter highlights, just a little bit, to make my snow sparkle a little more. So clean your detail brush and this bright color. We're gonna add very bright details. For example, right here, right? Add some brighter highlights because of the light. And not everywhere, only a few areas. Okay, let's add some sparkle in here. Fade it out. Alright, so for the water part, we're going to start to add some details. For example, let's start with this, our flat brush and this darkest blue color snow. With some water, we're going to add some details, for example, right here. Very small amount, we don't want to overdo it. But we do want to add some reflections of the snow because of the branches, and it's all going to look kind of rough. Okay, continue. Adding a little reflection here. Some little details here. And you can move around. I'm recording at an awkward angle, so I'm gonna move around and try to add a little more. And you could totally add as much as you want. Okay, I know it's looking rough still, but that's what it takes. Gotta go back and forth. Now I'm gonna clean my flat brush and use this lightest color right here. Let's add some bright highlights next to this sun. For example, right in here. And now I'm going to use this darkest color, right? And a little bit of that blue. Mix it in here, get an in-between color, just a little darker color. And we're going to add some darker shadows, for example, right in here. Start to add a little bit more shadows in our river. Alright, so now I'm going to pick up my number 8 brush and use orange straight out of the tube in some water. And I'm going to glaze it around here. Make this a little brighter in color. Try to make it stand out. I want my river to glow here. And then use scarlet red. Okay, scarlet red, and switch to your number 4 brush. And you can use just the red by itself with water. And we're going to continue adding a little bit more intense reflection on some of these trees here, for example, right in here. I want the red to stand out a little more. I'm not going to do it everywhere, just right where I think the light is hitting some of these trees here. Alright, I'll be done for today. You could spend as much time as you want detailing any part now, mix similar colors to any section you're working on, and adjust and correct. Again, totally up to you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you for being here and for your great support. Please be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. Take care and God bless.